I've listened with interest to the debates on this issue and this topic, and you can understand why Australians will despair. We've heard from the government speakers, speaker after speaker, stand up and give a long list of the great gift that they are giving Australians in a tax cut, and then they'll single out aspects of the community that are getting more with the changes. Of course, Australians are doing it tough. Of course there is a cost of living crisis. And of course, if there is an opportunity to put more money in the pockets of Australians, we will take it. But let's not forget the circumstances of how this happened, because the motive and the timing of the change matters. And it doesn't just matter in the day-to-day Punch and Judy show of politics. It matters to whether we can address serious challenges that this country faces. Whenever a debate comes before the parliament, I usually pull out the intergenerational report and see if that has something to say on the particular issue that we're talking about. And when you look at one aspect that we can control in this place more than any other, it's government spending, because all of the effort is being put on two places: the Reserve Bank to address inflation by lifting interest rates, the only blunt instrument it has, and it punishes a particular cohort of Australians more than any other, those paying off a mortgage. And we seek to punish those who are trying to aspire to a better life, to earn more income and to produce more, to lift this country up. Now, on page 144 of the intergenerational report, there's a chapter on government spending, and it's quite alarming. Using 2022-2023 prices, at the turn of the century, government spending per person was about $15,000. So in real terms, the projections for that on the same prices, so this isn't inflation, this is on those prices, is projected to, by 2062, to be $40,000 per person. Now, we know that productivity has fallen off a cliff, so we know that that difference is not going to be made up by this country lifting the tide. And we've heard the JFK quote, where a rising tide lifts all boats. Now, that's not just a cute line. That is an important expression of where the growth in this country comes from. Because Australia is a prosperous, free country in spite of this place, not because of it. It is a prosperous and free country because of the hard work and free enterprise of Australians who have taken risks, who have worked hard, who have studied hard. And when this place has said to them, if you do that, there is not only a place here for you, but you will be rewarded for it. And this isn't a new debate. The debate about democratising power and prosperity to your country or centralising it in a place like this, that debate has been had and it has been won. It's one-sided. And to the credit of the Labor Party, there have been times when many Labor Party senior figures have understood that and fought for that. They certainly did in the 1980s under Bob Hawke and Paul Keating. And they did that with the support of the Liberal opposition. So our history, our DNA is whenever there is a chance to lean in to giving more to Australians, to supporting Australians, we will take it and we will support you. So the idea that this is driven by politics, our decision, is ridiculous. It's nonsense. The timing and the motive of this change shows that this is entirely driven by politics on the government side. For 18 months, 20 months, we have been telling you in speech after speech about how Australians are hurting. Food bank queues are through the roof. People are wondering whether they can keep their homes, and businesses don't know whether they will survive. And you were focused on other things. The government was focused on other things. But something happened over summer. And it wasn't that in the summer break the government members accepted our claim that Australians are doing tough. There was a concern about an upcoming by-election. And it's in my home state of Victoria, in the seat of Dunkley, on the 2nd of March, weeks away. Now, we know that timing and motive matters because the Treasurer told us so. The Treasurer went on ABC, and the government's liked to quote ABC throughout the last week, but on 7:30 report the Treasurer said that the timing was about Dunkley. And that's why we've rushed this on here. Australians have been hurting for 20 months, but there's a by-election. Let's hurry up and get it done. Many speakers have also spoken about how if we isolate just the money that you will get back compared to one proposal for another, we're missing the reality of how people live their lives. There's multiple sides to this ledger. Of course, more money at home is needed. But let's not forget what's going out. The average house is going to get about $1,000 more for this change, and we welcome that. But the average house on the average income has seen a real loss in real wages of $8,000. So you're giving 10% with one hand, and you're taking 10 times that with the other. And for those who are paying off a mortgage, on the average mortgage of $750,000, and in seats like mine, that is a fraction needed to buy a modest house or a unit, that has seen a $24,000 per year increase. And for young Australians who aspire to their own home, particularly those in metropolitan Melbourne, Sydney, Brisbane and Adelaide, where house prices are at record levels, many young Australians are giving up. What are we saying to them? This was the pathway back. You study hard, you work hard, you aspire to earn more. You too can own your own bit of Australia. Deputy Speaker, last Friday I spoke to the Governor of the Reserve Bank. We noted how the average income earner on $93,000 can only afford a median house in 3 of Melbourne's suburbs. Some correctly observed that most people purchase a house as a couple or a household, and others noted that the median, as opposed to average salary, is more relevant. So let me outline each, and for those watching, if I could ask you to imagine a table full of M&Ms. And if you focused on metropolitan Melbourne, where I am from, there are only 354 suburbs. You can expand the definition and make it more or less, but let's focus on metropolitan Melbourne, 354 suburbs, 354 M&Ms on a table. And let's start with the assumption that everyone has managed to save a deposit of 20%. And that's a big assumption. The median property value in Melbourne is $900,000, $1.2 million in Sydney. That assumes a deposit of $180,000 in Melbourne, $240,000 in Sydney. Then add stamp duty for both, $42,000 for each. So you require, if you're looking for a median house in Melbourne, a deposit of $222,000 and $282,000 in Sydney. On that assumption, assuming that has been saved, a couple who both earn the average Victorian wage of about $95,000 can afford to buy a home in just 49 out of 354 suburbs. So out of all of those M&Ms, 49. But not every partnership is made up of full-time workers. Some are part-time, some are on parental leave. So the average household is often a more useful measure. And the average household can only afford 26 out of 354. And if we're to use the more accurate and relevant measure of average wage being median wage, because average wage is skewed by those who earn significant incomes, the billionaires of Australia. So if we use the middle, the median wage, a couple earning the median wage in Australia can afford a total out of 354 suburbs, 0. 0 houses are affordable for a couple on the median wage in Australia. Out of a table of 354 M&Ms, not one. Not one. Now you might say, well, temper your aspirations. What about a unit? Well, Deputy Speaker, out of 354 suburbs, they can afford 15 suburbs for a unit. But let's go back to the assumption I made at the start about deposits. It gets significantly worse if we remove that assumption, which is the reality for most Australians, given after-tax income is required to save that, or you're in the fortunate position of a family being able to help you. So, Deputy Speaker, how long would it take to save 20% of a median house in Melbourne? So how long would it take you to save $222,000? A couple on an average wage, it would take them 9 years. 9 years. The average household, it would take 13 years. And the median couple, so two people earning, median, take 10 Australians, both halfway. As a couple, it would take them 17 years to save 20% for the median deposit and stamp duty for a house in Melbourne, 20%. And all of those figures are much longer for Sydney, similar in Brisbane, similar in Adelaide. And all of this assumes there's no relationship breakdown, illness or loss of income. And we know those statistics are too high for so many families. This is for people who do everything right. They study and work hard. They stay together. They're healthy. And yet still this Australian dream is out of reach. It is no wonder the Bank of Mum and Dad is now the 9th largest lender. It is no wonder those who are not in landowning families are losing faith. Speaker, migrants move heaven and earth to come to this nation, including like my family, for a dream of a better life. The Australian dream puts a premium on study and hard work over the lottery of birth. It's what distinguishes us from any other country on earth. People speak of the American dream, but the Australian dream is far more powerful and leans towards aspiration and opportunity more than the talking points of US presidential candidates. But the Australian dream is now under threat. And solving a problem starts with recognising that you have one. So when we see speakers stand up and read out of the talking points the great gift that they're getting for this place, when at the same time their real incomes are 10 times worse. At the same time, government spending is out of control. So we're asking people to save money in their households, but we won't save money in our household here. When people despair that the one legislated bit of tax reform we've had in recent memory has been torn up, they can despair at the capacity of this place to move beyond the Punch and Judy show that is the political cycle. Because it's not good enough when Australians, particularly young Australians, have given up on the idea of owning their own home. And that's what's happened. And I'm not pretending that that is the cause of this particular government. That's been building for a while. But you can do something about it. This government can do something about it. We can all do something about it. And that is so much more important than the talking points of this particular debate. And when we change the 37% bracket, when we increase the comparative income that's paid at the top end, we're saying to those young Australians who didn't have parents who can help them, who did everything right, who studied hard, who worked hard, who aren't in those brackets now, but they want to be, and we know they're talented enough to get there. They're not just thinking about their pay packet today, they're thinking about what I can aspire to. And let's not forget the true inequity here are those who can afford to create structures and trusts that minimise their tax anyway. So the people who will be impacted by this can't afford those arrangements. How this happened matters. The timing matters. And we should all do better in turning our minds to proper tax reform and helping young Australians buy their own home.